As people start rolling in, I want to welcome you to Monday Night Reading. If you've never joined us before, what this is the first Monday of the month, typically, not this month, because the first Monday we were all still too stuck in holiday land to be able to do it. But normally on the first Monday of the month, save for a summer hiatus, we host a reading for nonfiction authors. In publishing, I have had my feet in both worlds, and fiction authors always get readings. So last year it occurred to me, hey, what about nonfiction authors? They should get readings too. So that's how this was born. I chose Monday night because when I was a playwright, Monday night readings were a thing and it was a very big deal. So I thought I would name it after that. This is how we work tonight. We have two authors from Top 3 Book Workshop, which is my 14-week program for nonfiction authors. Keithe and Francesca, hey, give a little wave. And then what I'm going to do is introduce them, ask a little bit about their book. They will read an excerpt from it. We'll have another little brief conversation about it, and then move on to the next author. What's so interesting about tonight is that we have both Keithe and Francesca are working on memoir in a different way. And also these are works in progress, which means these are unedited work. We often have authors who have been published and they read their shiny excerpts. So please understand that Keithe and Francesca this is an in-progress piece. So it requires quite a lot of courage to share this. A quick little note, one of the rules we have in Top 3 Book Workshop, we apply to Monday Night Reading, and that is the only person who gives constructive criticism in that class is little old me and no one else, which means that in this reading, we encourage you to refrain from sharing your critical thoughts and to be generous in your positive feedback. This is no small feat to share in progress work. If you do have questions, you can feel free to ask the questions though, if you have them. So please put them in the chat. And the last programming note, in case you have to beg off later, is our next Monday Night Reading is, I believe, Laura, I want to say February 5th. 6th, February 6th, and it is with Jada Sneller, who recently wrote She Builds. And we're excited to have her come talk about her book that was released last year. Okay, so first we're going to start with Keithe Bennett, who again is an alum of Top 3 Book Workshop. And Laura, I would love for you to introduce Keithe.
I would love to introduce the fantastic Keithe Bennett. Keithe Bennett has taken every opportunity for grand mistakes to be made available to her in her lifetime as a deadhead, single mother, and IT professional for various Fortune 500 companies over the past 25 years, and has discovered an effective healing process to the many tragedies, inherited traumas, and life lessons learned along the way. Originally from the Bronx, Keithe left home at 16 and lived on the road following the Grateful Dead, moved back to New York where she waitressed as a single mother, and then found her way into a technology career in 1999. Good year for it. Leveraging her unique experiences, she's sharing what she's learned about personal transformation through self-discovery, healing past traumas, and coming to be who you really are to reach your potential, all in her forthcoming book. Today, Keithe is enjoying her colorful life from South Florida with her dog, where she can be found working on her next project or trying to make friends with the wildlife in her yard. And I'll put how you can connect with Keithe in the chat. AJ?
Thank you, Laura. I love that bio, Keithe. That's fantastic. So Keithe, you know, in Top 3 Book Workshop, we talk about the book fundamentals. So I would love for you to share with everybody here your book fundamentals, which are, who are you writing your book for? What is your core message to that reader? And what is your promise to them?
Okay, so my reader is a professional who's dissatisfied with the current status quo, but unsure of what the next step is to be more fulfilled in life, particularly with regards to their work. And my core promise Our core message is contorting yourself to fit in never works. True confidence comes from remembering who you are and what you love. And then my core promise is by the end of this book, you will learn that it is possible to come to terms with your past, have confidence to be where you are now, and to create the future you want.
Love that. I love hearing you share that. And look, can you set up the excerpt for everybody about from where you're pulling the content today?
Sure. So I edited chapter 2. So in the first chapter, it starts out I'm in Crotonville, which is GE's training center. And I go to a class there, really an excellent class, but at the end of it, I get some feedback. And that feedback is that I'm unpolished. And it sends me into a tailspin, which really, I start questioning everything about myself, how to behave, how to still be myself. And I kind of freaked out. Like it was like, borderline nervous breakdown. And then I went to another class at Crotonville where it was special. This instructor is my coach today, but he brought in completely different techniques and for self-hypnosis, things like that. And one of these techniques was to banish that critical voice that was constantly yelling in my head. The one I'd get up before people and it would be like, everything is wrong, like just constant criticism. So in a quick 20-minute exercise, we banished that voice from my head and it never came back. And it completely changed everything for me in the sense that I was like, well, wait a minute. Who am I anyway? Like, why did I even care? Why did that just throw me like that? Considering my life, considering I grew up in the Bronx. Of course, I'm not polished. Like, are you kidding? But at the same time, so in chapter 2, I'm examining my values and where I come from and kind of connecting the dots of to bring everybody up to the current times.
Okay. I'm excited. This is probably my favorite chapter of your book, actually. So we don't get the whole thing, everybody, because that would take too long to read. But please settle in. You'll notice in the chat that people who are part of my author community will type in the chat something that resonates with them as they hear it. So be encouraged to join in with that, please. We do save the chat for the authors, and it's really lovely for them to see that. Especially on days when we don't feel like writing. So please join in if you feel inspired. All right, Keithe, here you go.
All right. And thank you everyone for coming. And also, feel free to just relax and turn off your screen. Like you don't need to be there. I'm just going to read. So I just hope you can enjoy it. Oh, and just to set up the chapter, I'm going to first be sharing some experiences from when I was young. And then I'm going to pause and I'm going to go to what's current time in the story, but it's actually early 2015, but I'll let you know. Okay. When I was 10, I had a plan to run away from home that was sure to work. I had it all figured out and only needed to convince my friend to come. As an aspiring woman of the world, I figured it would be easy enough for us to take our bikes on a road trip and sneak into hotel lounges to nap as needed. I had stayed in hotels with my parents on business trips at least twice, and it seemed like there were plenty buffet spreads around and no one would think anything of us helping ourselves. There wouldn't be a reason for the hotel staff to pay attention to us if we didn't cause any problems, and it probably wouldn't occur to them that we were runaways. I tried to convince my friend, but she had her doubts and wasn't into it, so I waited. Maybe it started when I was 7 and went to a birthday party at Van Clorton Park in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. I didn't really know any of the other kids at the party and was shy, standing off to the side and observing more than participating. The park was basically a large field for playing different sports with horse stables in one small area. As the other kids and I lined up for rides, we watched as the trainer used a lead to guide the horses one by one around a small fenced-in circle with their child passengers. I was a little scared to be so close to the horses and was careful not to stand behind one to avoid getting kicked, a warning that had stuck in my mind. but I easily put aside my fears and awe of these beautiful, powerful, wild animals. They're so large, and I was curious to understand their loud snorts or why they seem to have one eye on their immediate surroundings while scanning the horizon with the other. Horses are out of place in the city, whether they're pulling carriages in Central Park or have uniformed police mounted on their backs. They always seem a little sad, too, clopping along on the pavement with every move controlled by someone weighing them down with saddles and straps, blinders and bridles. At least the elephants and camels I had ridden at the Bronx Zoo seemed to get some space to themselves after the zoo closed, and some privacy and some more natural surroundings. I was late to the party and one of the last to line up, so I had plenty of time to watch as one kid after another slowly and rhythmically went around the circle, waving to their friends and family for pictures. The line seemed to last forever. Once most of the other kids had gone and the party turned into an ad hoc game of chase or taunting from the sidelines, I felt out of place and guilty, like I was holding up the next phase of the party, the girl who was only
Okay.
because our dads worked together.
Yeah, whatever works for you.
Trainers were checking their watches too and had brought out another horse, a gray Appaloosa, to double up and move it along faster. Finally, my turn came. I would ride the new horse. There was something about her. She had a spark, a hint of the wild burned in her eyes like she saw something very different from the rest of us. Just put your foot in the stirrup here and I'll help you get up the rest of the way, the trainer instructed me. I was too little to get my foot up that high, but used the stirrup to push myself up after I was lifted to hoist myself onto the horse. I looked up from my new vantage point. Where are the reins? I asked. There are no reins. This is an English saddle, and reins are used for Western saddles. He pointed to a lump in front of me. This is the horn. You hold on to this. How does the horse know which way to turn without reins? He flashed me a somewhat condescending smile, which annoyed me. I only wanted to be prepared, but as a kid, it's hard to be taken seriously. I'll be guiding the horse and she knows where to go. Now, when you're ready, give a little kick with the heel of your foot and she'll start moving forward. I had more questions and was a little disappointed this wasn't going to be as I had imagined, but did as I was told and gave a gentle kick into the horse's side. We started to plod along in the fenced-in circle. Something happened. I don't know if it was a sound or what, but the energy shifted and suddenly my body popped up and out of the saddle. I caught on to the first thing I could, which was the horse's mane, and instinctively grabbed it with both hands as the rest of me went airborne. With my fists clenched so tightly, my nails were digging into the palms of my hands. We were off. My horse had jumped the low barrier, gotten away from the trainer, and now we were tearing across the park. It was terrifying and exciting at the same time. I felt so alive and was barely aware of the saddle horn rhythmically slamming into my chest as I bounced horizontally, hovering over the horse, somehow managing to hang on, my grip on her mane being the only thing keeping me connected and from toppling off. As we approached the edge of the park, bordered by cement streets and the entrance to the Henry Hudson Parkway, she slowed down and then came to a stop. After scanning the area to make sure there weren't any other options, she gave up with an exasperated snort and turned back toward the people. Our moment was over as adults came running, shouting, and concerned about the whole thing. I was in tears, some of it from the pain of the saddle horn, but also from the excitement and being so full of so many feelings at once. As I returned to join the group, the other kids were jealous, and they complained about their little baby rides compared to mine. I felt like a celebrity, but in the back of my mind, I was still in the moment of peak excitement, fantasizing about how we could keep going, running far, far away from them, from the city and all the people in it, somewhere else where we belong. My time eventually came. On my 16th birthday, I executed on a plan to break free and find my own way. It was fall of 1989 and the Grateful Dead were playing the Meadowlands in New Jersey. I'd gone to a few shows at Madison Square Garden the year before and immediately felt connected to the scene. I belonged there with the other sparkly-eyed and smiling hippies. I'd been going to high school, at least sometimes, but school didn't seem relevant, especially when there were so many other exciting things to do. I skipped class a lot and explored New York with my friends instead. A teenager with a little money in her pocket has a lot of options. I went to see the Dead at the Meadowlands, and on the final night, I brought my bag, a change of clothes, $20, and a plan to go all in, descending into the chaotic and exciting circus of my first tour. This discombobulated gang of misfits immediately became my family, a spectacle of personified collective consciousness looking for entertainment, swept up in a wave of organized chaos and disorganized crime. Colorful and cautiously welcoming to newcomers, but once I made it through any initial shields of judgment and suspicion, I was in for life. I loved being a part of this traveling community of freaks and weirdos, and even today remain connected to that world. A Deadhead sticker on a car or t-shirt fills me with an instant sense of solidarity and connection with friends I haven't met yet. Camping in the arena parking lots during Dead shows was mostly tolerated back then, although the end was in sight. Technicolor tie-dyed and batik blankets would be laid out with all sorts of crafts and wares for sale in the ad hoc marketplace, along with people walking through the crowd carrying armfuls of t-shirts, stickers, and handmade jewelry. Calls for ice-cold beer, vegetarian burritos, and a more subtle 1 for 3, 2 for 5 interplayed with the music from car radios and a drum circle in the distance, a cacophony of sounds melting into a song that was more of a vibe than a noise. Hippie chicks wearing skirts and bells and handmade dresses, guys in tie-dyes and Guatemalan pants. Nothing matched, yet it all did in its own way, with an excess of color and texture, patterns and friendly knowing smiles if someone's gaze fixated on it all for too long. The ubiquitous long hair and blonde dreadlocks reminiscent of the scraggly sun-worn looks of outdoor cats. The scent of patchouli oil and sandalwood incense, some meat on a grill wafting through the air. Dogs darted in and out of the crowds, nomadic like their people and focused on staying with the pack. Drum circles would form with people wildly dancing, feeding off and into the energy of the moment. It was incomprehensible in a lot of ways, but I knew I was home, and these were my people. I held on, following the tour down the East Coast to the last shows in Miami, catching rides with different people along the way and making new friends. Miami was the last stop on the tour for the season, and some people were going to the Fantasy Fest in Key West. Curious about the costumes and wanting to explore the tropical fantasy land of South Florida, I decided to go too. I didn't think through how I was going to make money or otherwise take care of myself outside of the parking lot economy, but didn't concern myself with those kind of details. Instead, trusted that things would work out. Key West is paradise, and although there were some challenges, I fell right into the laid-back, easy living vibe. We camped on the different beaches known by their mile marker names. The weather allowed for it, and it didn't cost anything which matched my budget. One night, I was sleeping on an ocean overlook. I woke up being eaten alive by sand fleas or mosquitoes and sat up to bat them away. As I opened my eyes and took in the hazy spectacle of day coming to meet the night, everything else fell away. Above me was a dark and velvety sky full of stars. So many stars. Growing up in the city, I only saw skies like that at the planetarium. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, gently lighting up the water as the waves glittered and flowed. Overhead shades of pinks and purples, then wisps of blue as the morning sky transitioned from the starry night directly above. Dolphins were leaping in the distance, playing along the horizon as seabirds flew above them. The October air was warm and balmy, the scent of seagrass and sweet-smelling flowers wafting through the air. It seemed unreal, like I had passed through from reality to a spirit world and was looking straight into the face of God. And then here, I'm going to transition to current time, which is early in 2015. As I return home from Crotonville to my small but efficient apartment in Mamaroneck, Jerry looks up from the spot where he had been sleeping and meows a creaky hello, or maybe issues a complaint about how I've been gone for days and woke him up. Jerry is a 20-year-old cat, closing in on 21, and nothing like the young feral outdoor cat I brought home as a teeny tiny kitten. When he came into our lives, I was pregnant with Kyle, my third child, and Dave and I were deeply entangled in the love and drama of our relationship. We had recently moved from an apartment in the city to a condo in the suburbs of Danbury, Connecticut, and our family was ready for a new furry friend, thinking my eldest daughter might enjoy having a kitten to snuggle and to focus her attention on when the new baby came. My Aunt Mary looks after her McLean Avenue neighborhood stray cats and puts out food in her yard for them. She also carefully traps them to get the cats fixed and vaccinated before releasing them back into their wild homes where Yonkers meets the Bronx. Jerry's mother, Jezebel, showed up one day looking for something to eat, pregnant and still a kitten herself. My aunt arranged a nice nesting space for her on the indoor porch and helped care for her small litter of kittens once they were born. But Jezebel's feral wild nature wouldn't allow her to settle into this new indoor domestic life. Nor was she ready to be a mother and seemed confused and sometimes irritated by her hungry and needy kittens. She wasn't feeding or grooming them consistently, and when she had had enough, started to wander off, disappearing for days at a time. Mary wanted to get these kittens into new homes as soon as possible. We were happy to take one off her hands. When we got this little gray tiger-striped kitten, he fit in the palm of my hand and couldn't have been any more adorable. We named him Jerry, after Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead. But moving a wild cat from the city to the suburbs didn't turn him into a domesticated house cat any more than it turned me into a dutiful housewife. I tried to clean him up and contain him just like I cut my dreadlocks, clipped coupons, and dressed in clothes from the mall. But costumes and a change of scenery weren't enough to quiet our burning desire for adventure and taking risks. It may even have had the opposite effect, provoking a need to shake things up just to see what happens. Jerry is a feral cat and proved it again and again. He'd scatter his food all over the floor, eat voraciously while on high alert, and then tear around the place like a maniac. Sometimes he would be so full of energy and so worked up that he'd propel himself up a wall to launch an attack. This little cat terrorized the entire family and was ready to pounce at any time. No barefoot was safe. He needed to be free, wild, and outdoors as often as possible to release some of his energy into the world. Somehow he fended for himself, making up for his small stature with a big dose of crazy, always looking a little rough and never having learned the refined skills of domesticated cats, such as grooming himself. Jerry came home at night and to eat, but mostly he wandered the neighborhoods where we lived, stalking conflict and ever vigilant in the violent world he was at least partially responsible for. I wasn't ready for any of the life I had created for myself, despite spending the better part of the 90s pregnant, breastfeeding, and on diaper duty. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I knew nothing about being a Connecticut suburban housewife trying to keep up with everything that comes with having children. But doing what I needed to do, I kept going and tried to figure things out, even as I complicated and suffered through it. It's all I knew. The same summer Jerry the cat joined our family, I passed my driving test and upgraded my under 21 permit to a driver's license. Not long after, I had an unfortunate and newsworthy car accident, which sadly took one of our children, ushering in a new era of devastation and turmoil. I was emotionally debilitated, but pressed on anyway, trying to keep up the facade, convinced I could find my way to and pull off normal, provided I kept my and the emotions of those around me under control. I got a job at a restaurant waiting tables, got my good enough diploma, my GED, and used these resources to enroll in Western Connecticut State University, where I took classes for a semester. Meanwhile, I found myself pregnant again, even as my marriage fell apart in slow motion. We tried to save it by changing the scene, first by moving to Yonkers near Dave's family. Then I went back to Connecticut 5 years later to Bethel this time, San's husband, but with full custody of the cat. Jerry grew into a tough little street cat and valued his freedom above all else. Truly fearless, he used up at least 5 of his lives that I know of anyway. His wounds were generally on or near his face, a strong sign that he was facing his attacker head on if not the instigator. Only once, when he dragged himself home with a broken pelvis, did he look like he might have been trying to get away from the car that likely swiped him. I wonder if he thought he had caught his horse and was headed on to his next adventure before realizing 3,000 pounds of motorized metal on wheels was more than he could handle. By the time we left Bethel and moved to Mamaroneck, back in New York, Jerry was slowing down and beat up, his days numbered as an outdoor cat. The kids were older and having transitioned from waiting tables to working in IT at the turn of the century, my job was now a viable career rather than an assortment of gigs I would hustle up and string together. During the day, I worked for Pace University as a systems admin and technical instructor, and I managed to cobble together some workshops that I would teach at night for extra cash, which was never really extra. One of the benefits of working for the university was being able to go to school tuition free. So I also worked on my bachelor's degree part-time, eventually getting a BS in telecommunications. The apartment we moved to is in a more populated area near Boston Post Road, and the logistics for a cat to come and go as he pleased wasn't going to happen. I tried to find a way and even put a leash on him to see if that might work, but Jerry would just flop down on his side and refuse to move while psychically conveying to me that he would die before allowing me to lead him around on a leash. Humiliation. Keeping him inside was no small decision, but the alternative was too gruesome. Jerry was not at all happy with being contained. He spent his time focused on the windows, watching the birds, trees, anything that moved in the world of outside, occasionally glancing back at me with contempt. But in time, he mellowed out. Perhaps as he learned to appreciate the safety and predictability of being an indoor cat. After all, he was an aging old man and not as agile as he once was. He developed what seemed like dementia, forgetting he didn't like people, and now looks for attention, sidling up close and wanting me to pet him. It's hard to trust him after all these years, and sometimes the fire in his eyes ignite when he's triggered, but that part of him has mostly faded away. These days, he is a completely different cat than that palm-sized toe tormentor. Possibly blind in his one glassy eye, he's mostly found curled up and sleeping on the daybed in the living room, which is where I find him now. He's watching me with his one good eye and rolls over to his back to be pet like a dog. I cautiously stroke him and give him some love, attempting to smooth out some of his rumpled fur going in every direction. He makes a creaking sound as he opens his mouth and speaks a soundless meow. Jerry, you're so unpolished. I shake my head and smile. As if in response, a cloud of dander floats up from where I disturbed it, immediately making my eyes water and my throat itch. Jerry reaches out for a big stretch while laying on his side and curls backwards into a banana shape, followed by a half-hearted attempt to clean one of his paws until he loses his train of thought, closes his eyes, and gets back to his nap.
Yes. Oh, Jerry, the unpolished cat. Magnificent, 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 magnificent. Just, I'm so impressed with you. I'm so impressed with you. I'm so impressed with you. You've just grown so much as a writer, and I can't wait for people to see this entire book. That's just an excerpt from one chapter, y'all. So Keithe, I love to ask this question. What is the change you hope to see in the world through your book?
So what I learned throughout the book is the importance of having a big and meaningful life. Right? We only get one. So if you're just focused on your work or focused on, tomorrow and today, you're not always on the future. You're not going to be able to enjoy now. But the change I'm hoping to make is for people to find that in their own lives and find what they need, whether it's a need to do something creative outside of work, whether it's, really getting into nature, just living big and living as big as they can, because, you get one shot.
So Keitha, tell us where can people connect with you so they can hear about when the book will be available?
So I have a website which has nothing but my face on it and a button to email me. It's
That's all you need.
keithebennett.com.
That's all you need.
I will get that done. I just haven't had a chance to do that. And then of course there's the LinkedIn and Facebook if we're connected there. My link that, yeah, I'm everywhere.
I do encourage you, you won't remember this, so now go on to Keitha's site, sign up for her mailing list, so that way you will know when she actually has a book you can order. This is a work in progress. So if you want to hear more about that, you'll get a surprise in your inbox one day. Guess what? My book is going to be published, and here's the date. Keitha, thank you so much for your willingness to tackle very deeply vulnerable topics in your book, and also for your courage in sharing everything with us tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity, AJ. And you're just an amazing writing coach. For anybody on this call who doesn't, AJ wrote Write a Must Read, which is her technique. But I was lucky enough to take a workshop with her, and she's just been I can't believe how much my work has been elevated since we started together. So thank you for that. And
Well,
thank
that was
Laura too.
Yes, Laura Stone. I thank you. That was very nice of you to share. But I really want to stress for you and for Francesca this commitment that you both have to craft and to realizing your vision. So that's all you, Keitha. It's all you. Thank you again. So now we're moving on to Francesca. Hey, how are you doing
Hello.
tonight?
I'm doing well, thanks. That was so much fun, Keitha. That was fantastic. Thank you.
I thought you would like that, Francesca.
I did. We need to talk more.
Yeah, you do. You do. So, Francesca, this is your second Monday night reading. And Laura will introduce you, but I just want everybody here to know that, I always mention Francesca when I share stories about how finding the story you want to tell, and staying true to your own vision, and not writing the thing that you think you should write. And so I just really want to celebrate you, because you came in with a book idea that was awesome, and eventually it evolved to the book that you're writing now, which is what your heart tells you want to write. And it also coincidentally, or not so coincidentally, because this is how the universe works, makes use of your incredible writing talents. I'll get to your book in a moment. I want to let Laura Stone, by the way, Laura Stone, I forgot to introduce, our Dean of Students, our cheerleader for our authors, and integral to our community. Laura, can you please introduce Francesca for us?
I would absolutely love to introduce my dear writing sprint pal, Francesca. Born conjoined twins, Emily and Francesca were separated at 4 days old in a landmark surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Due to complications at birth, Emily was born with a severe form of cerebral palsy. But despite the disparity of ability, Emily and Francesca had a relatively normal, healthy, and exceptionally happy life thanks to their parents, older sister Sarah, and incredible communities their family found and built. In 2013, at age 31, Emily lost a battle with pneumonia and passed away. Francesca is in the process of writing and publishing her first book, a collection of essays that address her journey with grief, its intersections with love and joy, and confronts the guilt she feels as a survivor, the lucky one. And I will put how you can connect with Francesca in the chat. AJ?
Oh, I actually got choked up when you said the lucky one. It still gets me every time that you mention that. Give us the book fundamentals. Give us the book fundamentals, Francesca.
You got it. My reader is, I am writing for readers who have experienced a loss and feel like they are racing to the finish line of that loss and grief process. And my core message is that grief is not a straight path that you can run to the end of. It is a web. And so my book's promise is that by the end of this book, you will realize how grief fits into your life beyond the loss.
Love, love, love. And so I want you to set this up, but for everybody here, Francesca's writing in a different way. It's a non-linear book of essays that is the memoir. So it's structured while Keitha's plays with time, Francesca's is these complete essays that they can stand alone. Set up this excerpt, please.
Sure thing. So this is going to be a selection from later on in the book. And since it's not linear, as AJ mentioned, you'll be able to follow along completely. But in this section, really what I'm covering is the experience of all the anger that came with both the, I guess, life and loss of living with Emily and just life in general. So it's about being mad.
It's about being mad. On a personal note, those of us in author community who have been here for Francesca through this journey, we love Emily so much. So we're so excited to hear this story. All right, Francesca, take it away.
Thank you. My dad was the one who made us attend church every Sunday. His faith was strong enough to drag all three of us girls. When she was younger, my dad carried Emily in what we called her red chair. It was a shiny red rubber that held her up and in place with a bolster between her knees. When she was smaller and lighter, we could put her in it and then sit her in the pew with us flanking her. When she became too big for a portable chair in the pew, we parked her wheelchair on the end, taking up as little space in the center aisle as possible. Unlike me, she loved church. I imagine the repetition of the format gave her comfort and familiarity. It must have felt something like having control. I spent less time with God in church than I did people watching and daydreaming. I scanned the pews for misbehaving attendees and outfits to love or hate. I amused myself thinking about where all those closed doors on the altar go to. I played with the kneeler, agitated Sarah, and tried to see how many patterns I could find in the tile on the floor. I picked up the hymnal from the book holder on the back of the pew in front of me, scanned the board at the front to see what number hymns were posted, and picked one that felt lucky or holy. And with my eyes staring straight at the altar, I flipped the pages back and forth while attempting to move the thought of the hymnal number from my head to my hands through divine intervention. The closer I got to the number, the more points God got. My people watching often drew me to fellow restless churchgoers, usually, but not always younger. My distracted gaze would land on someone locked in on the ultimate church distraction, Emily. There were the wide-eyed children twisted completely around in their pews with their eyes transfixed on sizing Emily up. There were older children that knew enough to at least twist back and forth in an attempt to not technically stare. They kept looking back like characters in a horror film, being chased by a slow-moving but unstoppable threat. They just couldn't believe what they saw and had to check again to see it. Some picked their noses as they stared, some pointed and stared, a few giggled and stared. The years she sported her pixie cut, people stared, trying to guess her gender. Short hair and a wheelchair were the total sum of Emily to others. I hated the staring, but I hated the people who stared even more. I put every stare on a clock, and if they didn't turn back around in the allotted time I mentally gave them to get their fill, then I would level them with my seething, protective, raging gaze back. And hating so many people was exhausting, but it felt like my responsibility on behalf of Emily, who never seemed bothered by it. Why wasn't she bothered by it? I hate when people stare at you, Em. It makes me so mad, I just want to punch them. I paused to get a reaction, but there wasn't one. I think most of them aren't doing it to be mean, you know? Her eyes lifted up for yes. I think they're just curious, maybe, and don't know any better. Her eyes lifted up for yes and lingered a little longer. She was way ahead of me. I was so fixated on the offenders that I forgot to check with the person it should actually offend. Maybe she had already been through the anger and hatred phase. Maybe she didn't have that in her. Either way, I realized I belonged with the starers. We were the ones with the problem, not Emily. She wasn't mad. She was fine and paid attention in church. It was going to be a special trip to the casino. This was the new one in Chester County, Pennsylvania, not our go-to Delaware Park. Me, my parents, Emily, and the matriarch of slot machines, our grandmom, were going to try our luck. Emily loved playing the slots. She could push the spin button and usually won money. I, on the other hand, had no such luck. So I was happy to cheer Emily on for the majority of the time. We weren't playing very long when a uniform-wearing man approached us. He was a bouncer for the casino and asked to see some ID, something that disappointingly didn't even happen to us when we went to the casino on our 21st birthday. I got my wallet out and license and handed it to him. He passed it back and I turned to help Emily continue to play. And hers? He gestured limply to Emily. "You're joking," I said rather than asked. "No, she has to have an ID and be over 21 to be on the floor." Unsure why I had to point out the obvious, I replied, "She can't drive. She doesn't have a need for a license. We're twins. We're the same age. I can show you pictures to prove it." He repeated robotically that she needed to have a valid ID to be on the premises. Maybe we said more, really laid on the guilt. Maybe he offered a hapless apology, the kind that says, "Don't blame me," even though his discretion was entirely to blame. I'm sure I shot him some looks, but I don't recall our exit, just my fury. I was right back in church, disgusted with people. Unlike church, I didn't have to sit quietly by. At home, I hopped on the State of Delaware Motor Vehicles website and found out what Emily would need to get a state-issued identification card. I gathered up the $40, her birth certificate, and her social security card and loaded her into the van. The female officer stationed at the entrance held the door open for us as we entered. Inside the DMV, we took a ticket number, then a seat in the world's most crowded, miserable waiting area. Nobody was happy to be there, except Emily. I looked at our number and then the number they were currently serving. I let Emily know that there was a long wait and we might not be able to get it done today, but if we couldn't, I would come back with her another time. I kept an eye on her posture to see if her hips were starting to shift too far forward for too long in the chair. I stayed alert to any diaper issues that could come along and force us to head home. When not watching Emily, I scanned people waiting like I scanned the pews of church and found a familiar range. Some people avoided looking at Emily intentionally. Some smiled if I caught their eye, and the rest ran the gambit with looks of dismissiveness, sympathy, and curiosity. We waited. I ran out of fun things to point out and stupid comments meant to make her laugh. We waited more. It got harder to keep up the sense of adventure. We continued to wait. They called the next number. With a sigh, I looked at Emily and tried to sound less defeated than I felt. "Let's come back another time. It'll go faster, okay?" I stood up to leave, our trip's purpose unfulfilled. I saw the lady cop leave her post and cross over to us. She asked to see our ticket and if we were okay to wait. I told her no, I had to get her home and I didn't think we could hang around that long. She asked me to wait one more minute and took my ticket to one of the tellers. "Emily, don't get excited yet, but I think we might get bumped to the head of the line," I said, caught up in my own excitement. Seconds later, the lady cop was back and pointed us to an open window for service. I thanked her profusely and let her know she didn't have to do that, thanked her again, and took Emily over to get her ID. As I pushed Emily's chair in the right direction, I saw a few faces change in the crowd. More than one person had gone from disinterest or dismissive to disgusted at the special treatment we were getting. "What, you want to switch places? Because she has it so good, right? She's just drowning in all kinds of privilege. Yeah, go ahead, let's switch and see how you handled life, you shithead," screamed through my head as I locked eyes with a particularly nasty looking person. I exhaled and wheeled Emily to the window. Emily couldn't control her jaw or tongue movement well, which made getting a good picture sometimes a challenge. I let her know that usually they only take one picture, so she'd have to make it a good one, no retakes. She didn't need any. We admired her shiny new ID card, and I talked with residual vitriol about how she would never be thrown out of a casino again. While she beamed at her official ID, I was still pissed at the church starers, the bouncer, the jerks in the waiting room, at any hypothetical person in our way. As we went to leave, the lady cop was back at her post by the doors. She held the door for us again, and I thanked her once more. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. No problem. She obviously didn't want to make a big deal about it. I imagine drawing attention would draw complaints from others soon after. As we crossed the threshold and headed to the parking lot, Emily craned her head and tensed her body, twisting to look back. She had something she wanted to say. Emily's communication device, which we called her talker, was hooked up in case she had to answer questions at the DMV. She went through several different talkers over the years, but this one was a monitor mounted to the front of her wheelchair and connected to a switch that attached to her headrest. I turned Emily around and took her back to the officer, who had a quizzical look on her face when she saw us head back. "Everything okay?" she asked. She kept both authority and concern in her voice simultaneously. She would make a good teacher if she ever wanted to switch careers. She wanted to say something. It might just take a minute. The officer stood stiffly through the awkward silence while Emily clicked around to find the right words. Emily locked eyes with the only stranger she had bothered to notice in the DMV, as an artificially intelligent voice said, "Thank you." Unlike when I had profusely thanked her, the officer's eyes involuntarily welled up, and she swallowed a little bit before saying, "You're very welcome." Emily could get mad like anyone else, but only at the things that really mattered. She went through a long period of being obsessed with recording what activities she did and with whom in a binder we called her attendance book. When she noticed that people were recording activities and then absentmindedly walking away with the pen so that the next person couldn't, she had her speech therapist add a 2-sentence statement to her talker. "Please sign my attendance book. Please don't take my pen." She got mad if you took her pen. Tone, volume, and inflection weren't adjustable for the talker. So repetition was how she conveyed urgency, importance, frustration, and sometimes all three. One of us would be in her backpack, not even have her binder in hand, and get hit with one of many, "Please sign my attendance book. Please don't take my pen." After filling out her activity in the book, we would have to show her that we put the pen back while hearing another, "Please sign my attendance book. Please don't take my pen." "Emily, I'm not taking your pen, jeez." Any exasperation on our part would just be met with another round of, "Please sign my attendance book. Please don't take my pen." Most of her emotional cues were nonverbal. When upset, her body would get really tense and she would strain her muscles to point adamantly with her eyes, wave furiously with her arms, or kick hard with her legs. She could yell at us with her body. And there were certain tasks that none of us did without Emily when she was around. When home, Emily was in charge of going through all the circulars in the Sunday newspaper, tearing off tinfoil or saran wrap to cover leftovers, fluffing out a new trash bag to put in when Dad took the trash out, holding the hose to fill the wading pool my parents bought her to splash in on hot days. When robbed of these opportunities, her anger was temporary, but the effect long-lasting. We all had to be aware of behavior that didn't matter to us, but was everything to Emily. She knew the difference better than we did. It's easy to look at her as a hallmark of inspiration for caring about the little things when I mentioned the mundane that would incur her wrath if she was left out. But that's not it. They weren't little tasks for her. They were the tasks she was able to do. They were everything. Emily schooled all of us one holiday. It was Easter Sunday. Even though we were all well past the age of being forced to go to church and organized religion never took a strong foothold in our lives as adults, we still used the traditional holidays as an excuse to do what was sacred to us: get together as a family. For this Easter, we gathered at my Aunt Carmela's house. An organist for different parishes, she had befriended a new priest this year and decided to include him in the family dinner. The dinner conversation became the hell that is small talk. I opted out of engaging with the priest as much as I could. I busied myself with the important tasks of spreading the food on my plate around to make it look like I was eating more, and trying to catch Sarah or my mom's eye and make them laugh. When all else failed, I just used the revolving door of getting a drink and using the bathroom to excuse myself from fake smiling and polite nodding. In an odd attempt to entertain us, the priest began to animatedly recount a story he heard. There was a man whose dog would use his neighbor's yard when nature called. I wondered what made him think this was an appropriate dinner conversation with a family he didn't really know. I was too quick to judge. He made it so much worse. The neighbor got so upset at this dog going in his yard that he threatened to shoot the dog next time. At this point, my family audibly gasped. Dog shit was one thing. Dog dying was way over the line. He read the room worse than anyone I have ever seen before. And he did. He shot him, he finished. In our pause of disgust, he equivocated, the dog's owner had been warned. I couldn't hear Emily's computer clicking over the roar of outrage bubbling up inside me. My mom, Sarah, and I were mad. Emily didn't get mad, though. Her computer's artificial voice broke through with a question. Do you have any pets? The priest blushed and babbled around for the right words. He admitted that no, he did not. And that was a good point. It was. We didn't need to say anything else. Emily was always teaching us about what was and wasn't important. I stewed and fumed over stares and dirty looks from inconsequential strangers I would never see again and never recognize if I did. Emily didn't bother with what she couldn't do. Her energy was for what she could. I can't help but still get mad when I think about all the times she was slighted by idiots and forced to live in a world that made everything harder than it had to be for her. Sometimes I think about the anger as another organ that we shared. The doctors gave each of us some liver, but maybe they gave me more of our anger. I think of what else I got in our separation. The able body, the longer life, and maybe with it, all this madness.
Yes. Woo! So good. So good. How close do you think you are to finishing this wonderful, wonderful collection of stories about these people who are your people, but I feel, and I know so many of your author friends and community feel like we know them and want to read everything we can. How close are you to finishing?
Oh, I have a really hard time knowing that, but I can confidently say that I am probably a few months from finishing, just like 2, maybe more months from finishing the manuscript.
That's amazing. And it's okay if you don't, but I just have to ask because I know people are wondering, because I know we all want to read it. And of course you have to read the audiobook yourself. We have to hear that you read the audiobook. Like I said earlier, I think I really love Emily. And I feel like I've gotten to know her over all the essays, and I would have just loved to have met her in person. And so let me ask you the same question I asked Keithe. What is the change you hope to see in the world through this book?
So this I struggled with because as a memoir, it's really hard to get to since there's no direct lesson of an ROI to measure in a change. So when I thought about it, I felt like I really want people to feel safe to explore their grief as a part of their life and not a defining moment in their life. And I want those with survivor's guilt to be able to identify it and then separate it from grief. I also, you know what, Laura, I think I selfishly am doing this to also just continue Emily, like just to this wonderful person that didn't get to meet so many people that changed our lives so amazingly for the better, that I feel like whatever she did for us, I want to get that out there. That's what I want to do. And so like, here's Emily. I just want to share her.
We want you to share. I mean, you've told so many Emily stories. They stay with me, and they're the kind of stories that I find I recount to my wife or to friends, and then this happened, and oh, then this happened, and just because I will remember them forever, and they're meaningful to me. That's remarkable feat for an author. And like Keithe, I have to really commend you because, and you've heard me say this before, but you're a different writer than you were when you first came into workshop, and you have just diligently, at your own pace, honoring your own voice, honoring your own vision, become such an incredible writer. You have really honed your craft, and it's wonderful to see. Incidentally, everybody, both Keithe and Francesca need book deals. So they're both still working on manuscripts, and they have to, complete the manuscript in order to go submit. But if you know anyone, you never know, please hit them up. And Francesca, how can people find out when the book will be available, or if you have another reading or event?
Thank you so much, AJ. I think Laura just dropped in the chat. My Instagram is probably going to be the best place to follow me. And Medium, I do have an account there, and I've, very, very painfully, slowly posted 2 things there, and maybe I'll post this 3rd, and I'll get more courage and post more. So definitely Medium and Instagram.
You can read there's a really good one up on Medium that I go to the, I don't know if, oh, you put it up. Good, Laura. Yeah. So you can go there to read more stories from this wonderful book. Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everybody who's here. And your comments mean the world to me. The texts that I'm getting, the comments, thank you so much. This was awesome.
I see Nick's comment. Francesca and Emily were amazing together. It's what I remember. One of my favorite memories from your stories is when you go to, I don't know if it's CVS or Walgreens, and the person recognizes you.
Yeah.
And it's the first time someone recognizes you because they know Emily and you look like Emily.
Yeah, it was the only twin moment. It was so cool.
I love that so much. I'll never forget it. I think about it every time I walk into a Walgreens, which it might have been a CVS, but I still think about
it was a Rite Aid, I think.
Okay, but I still think about it at Walgreens because they all look okay. Everyone, I hope you will follow these authors and follow their stories and support them and elevate them. We'll be sending out tomorrow a YouTube link for the recording if you feel you want to share it with anybody. Keithe and Francesca, I'm so incredibly proud of you. I don't really have words sufficient to express the pride I feel, and how honored we are that you're part of this community and share with us. Everyone, thank you for showing up and for your lovely words of support. Authorship is lonely. We really appreciate that you would celebrate these authors, and we hope we'll see you on February 6th for our next Monday night reading with Jada Sneller. Have a good night, everyone.